making verbal connections is about how we speak and what we say, and sometimes what we don't say. See, it's not just about the words we use, but verbal connections are also made by our delivery. The first thing that others, receivers and connections, will notice about the way that we speak is the speed or rate at which we speak. We've all made assumptions about someone else based on the rate or speed of their speech. If they speak very quickly and very rapidly, they're oftentimes viewed as someone who's very, very intense, is a quick decision maker, and they don't have time to waste. If they speak rather slowly and deliberately, sometimes we tend to assume that they may not be as intelligent as ourselves. Both assumptions could be wrong. However, the receiver in the conversation will make assumptions about you based on your rate of speed. If they speak at a high rate of speed and you tend to naturally speak slower, they will make assumptions about who you are. So initially, match their rate of speech, even if it's uncomfortable for you. Because once you match their rate of speed at a higher speaking speed than you're familiar or comfortable with, you can, each time you respond to them, speak a little more slowly and can actually bring their speed down to a level that's more comfortable for you and one in which you feel comfortable in asking difficult questions. The same can occur for someone who's speaking rather slowly. If each time you respond a little more quickly, they'll begin to match your rate of speech until they reach a comfort level that they'll continue to work with. It is, however, considered and perceived by most receivers as being impolite if you speak over their rate of speed deliberately and continue to speak rapidly and much more quickly than they do. It's perceived as you are attempting to manipulate or control them, or actually are placing themselves verbally better than they are. That is where mirroring or mismatching comes in. Mirroring is where you begin to respond at the same rate of speed as the individual with whom you are speaking. If there's that mismatch there, a difference in rate of speed, then match their speed and then slowly move to the speed at which you are most comfortable. Most speakers, however, will eventually reach a speed that they will not go beyond. They'll either not slow down beyond that point or speak faster than that rate, and that's the rate at which they are comfortable and the rate at which you should continue to carry on a conversation with them. The next thing that others will judge us on the way that we speak is prosody. Prosody is the fluid nature of speech. It's, as my mother, who taught first grade, used to say, putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. It's very much how we emphasize certain words in the way that we speak. It's not just what we say, it's how we say it. And if we say it with an uneven flow, where the flow is constantly disrupted, or we tend to make a lot of and ers and ahs and uhs and other noises in the rate of speech, then it can in fact become difficult for others to fully understand what we're saying. Prosody is oftentimes affected by the adult speakers of a second language, where they have grown up speaking one language and have now learned a second language. However, they speak with the same rate of flow as their prior language. They also tend to listen in that same fluid nature of speech. So as you listen to the way that they speak, mirror or match as much as possible the way that they speak so that they will understand better what you are saying. This is different from an accent. An accent is actually the way that words are stated, the way that they are pronounced. There are native dialects and non-native dialects, and dialect is actually a unique term in terms of Utah has its own native dialect. It's disappeared over the last generation with more and more immigrants moving in. But if you had spoken to my grandmother, who was raised in a small town in southern Utah, she had a very unique native dialect for southern Utah, where my daddy was born on the 3rd of July, the 4th of July. It was awful cold that day when they drove him home from the hospital in the Corps out to Escalante, where he was raised. Did you catch any of that? You may not have, because it was a unique dialect. So when you speak with someone for whom speaking is non-native, it may appear to you that they are mispronouncing words, when in fact they are pronouncing words with vowel or consonant sounds that are from their primary language. Young children tend to speak without as much of an accent because they have not trained themselves not to hear or pronounce certain sounds, and so they can replicate the sounds they hear around them more completely. It's best not to try to mimic someone else's accent. That's considered condescending. But make sure that if you do misunderstand a word or think you misunderstand a word, that it's not impolite to ask them to restate what they've said. Say, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying, so that they can restate. Because even in Utah, we do have our own unique dialects. The volume at which you speak can also affect how well you connect with others. A soft, timid voice like this may be perceived as someone who's unsure of themselves, whereas loud people tend to be perceived as decision makers. And those who speak somewhere in between, well, we tend to get left out as well. Speaking more loudly than the person with whom you're speaking appears to be talking over them. Now, a caveat to that: those who may be hard of hearing or have hearing difficulties may interact differently because they do not hear you the same way they hear themselves. Have you ever noticed your voice sounds different when you record and you sound louder than other people assume you are? It's because you hear your voice right through the bones in your jaw, going directly to your eardrums, and you hear your own volume different than others perceive you. If it seems to you that they are speaking softly and you seem to be loud, then come down to match their voice. If they are hard of hearing, they may speak loudly because they cannot hear themselves, or you may actually see someone turn a dominant ear toward you. They're not ignoring you, but many people have an ear that is dominant, and if they're hard of hearing, they may actually be turning so that their adaptive devices will pick you up more clearly. You have to understand that these are called hearing aids, not listening aids. Most modern hearing aids have multi-directional microphones, which means they pick up all of the sound around the hearer and magnify all of the sounds. So your voice, unfortunately, may be getting lost in the background sound around them. Most, however, do have applications that allow the listener to change those to a forward-facing microphone only. But, be cognizant of that. Most hearing aids are not really obvious anymore, but someone who is hard of hearing or was raised hard of hearing may have some different ways of interacting verbally to adapt to. Finally, an embedded command. An embedded command is a learned way of speaking. It is the pause that commands others to do something. When working with others and when speaking with others, if there is a particular point you choose to emphasize, a slight pause just prior to the emphasis and just after the emphasis allows the listener to process that and to focus on what you just emphasized. If you want them to perform a specific command, embed the command in that pause. If I want you to listen, then they'll listen. If I want them to sign this document, then they will sign this document. As humans, we tend to focus on the first and last things we hear. And by pausing slightly, it makes that the first thing they hear and what they will respond to.